Brett, how you doing, man? You're on fire with the comments on the posts there. We've got to get a beer at some point. You seem like a pretty funny son of a bitch. What do you got going on tonight? Anything fun? Yeah, I'm doing fine. Trying to bang out some writing. I've got all my Bud Dajo or Dajo. That's how you say it. Bud Dajo research and trying to get it all done. Oh, you did? What's it called? I was going to say, we should check the Osprey Publishing. They might have something on them, on Belisarius. If you had to pick a particular battle that Belisarius fought, which one would you find most interesting? Last Roman general or something like that. Oh, cool. Very cool. When you get a chance, shoot me a screen grab of the title. I'd be interested in grabbing it for myself. I don't know enough about the guy. I'm actually very much looking forward to your presentation when we get to Siege of Rome. Yeah. It's such a bizarre, that time period, where you have Belisarius and Narcissus trying to regroup and rebuild. That's Justinian? That time period is really, really interesting to me. 5 days off soon. Cool. Well, don't spend too much time on it. It's, I don't know what you do for work, but it sounds like if you have 5 days off, then you must be busting tail. So I don't want you feeling like you're doing homework on it. How you doing, Dino? Good. Well, as long as you're enjoying yourself, I guess it doesn't matter. It'll be interesting to see what you come up with, though. What's going on, Romeo? How you doing, man? You guys are down in North Carolina, right? You're probably just starting to get this COVID-19 kind of craze going on in your neck of the woods. Should be sleeping. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea, but I gotta get this fucking episode done. I don't know if I posted some of these, but you guys might find them interesting. Some of the political cartoons that came along with this book about Bud Dajo are really interesting. I particularly think this one is pretty interesting. And then you've got what is fairly obviously a Teddy Roosevelt type. I just think it's wild how political cartoons at one point were way more edgy and way more dangerous than they could possibly be today. This one right here is particularly interesting. That's a Native American who's obviously looking away from what's going on. And then you've got the Moro Filipino, and you've got your U.S. representative there, kind of giving it to the Moro people. One of the quotes that I've come across here that I think is really, really good and really tells you a lot about General Wood is I'm trying to find it. So his methodology here is that one clean-cut lesson will be quite sufficient for them, but it should be of such character as not to need a dozen fritting repetitions. Which tells you how Wood was really looking at the situation. And as I've gone through kind of what I'm doing right now, so when I write these episodes, I typically, there's between 28 and 40 pages. This one's probably going to be around 30, 35. And I try and kind of find the thread, what's the story, how are we telling it? This one's interesting because I'm going to open with a little kind of quick, it's like we're going to telescope in from Afghanistan and the current situation in Afghanistan and how that situation broke down so rapidly. Then we're going to skip back 30 years to Vietnam, cover that almost identical type situation. Then we're going to skip back to Tomorrowland. So one of the kind of window phrases or key phrases that I kind of am basing this all on is in Vietnam you have that famous quote of a U.S. officer saying that in order to save the village we had to destroy the village. It's fascinating to me that is not a unique to that situation or Vietnam in particular. In fact, that is the exact same mentality that we went into with the Moros in the Philippines, and we in fact found ourselves again doing the same kind of thing in Afghanistan. And so it's also not unique to the United States. You have situations where each one of these countries, whether it be Vietnam, Afghanistan, or the Philippines, were each attempted to be conquered by the Spanish, by the Russians, the British, the French, the Chinese, even the Mongols tried to conquer Vietnam at one point. And each one of those massive empires failed to conquer these smaller civilizations, these smaller cultures, because of a myriad of factors. But the idea that each time that the U.S. has found itself in a situation where we are attempting to colonize, whether or not we plant the flag and call it a colony, or we go in and take down the existing government and put in a more friendly, more trade accepting, or whatever you want to call it, in place, it's essentially a colony. It's American imperialism, and there's that great Dan Carlin episode of Hardcore History where I think it's called America in Peril or America in Peril, where he talks about how it's the same thing, where the Spanish-American War is this outcropping of empire building. Well, that's essentially what we were doing in Vietnam. Now, granted, we're doing it for a different reason. We're trying to fight Soviets. We're trying to fight the spread of communism into Southeast Asia. And same thing, Afghanistan, we're not necessarily trying to make a true colony, but we are trying to, we overthrew Saddam and tried to put a more friendly government in power in a oil-producing nation in the Middle East. Well, in the Philippines, we tried to put a friendly government in play right off the coast of China, and we ran into the same problems that we've run into each time. It's amazing to me that we haven't learned the lesson, or maybe we have now. Let's hope. But in the Philippines, we were there for 40 plus years. In Vietnam, we were there for we started in 47, technically, and so we were there for almost 30 years, something like that. I think it was 55, we ended up putting guys on the ground, so it's 20 plus years that we were there, and then now we're rapidly coming up on 20 years of involvement in the Iraq War, in Afghanistan, it never ends well. But so what I was saying is the Vietnam quote of we had to destroy the village to save the village. I found a very interesting parallel or correlating quote from a editorial in the Washington Post back in 1906, right after the Bud Dajo massacre. It says, quote, "A war for civilization. The fact is, A war for civilization is the title of this editorial." And the writer says, "The fact is that General Wood is civilizing the Moros on the idea that there are no good Moros but dead ones. There is no authority in the Constitution to shoot civilization into savages on other hemispheres. If we cannot govern the Moros without murdering women and children, better that we withdraw and let them govern themselves." And I think the pertinent part, the interesting window part, is the idea of there's no authority in the Constitution to shoot civilization into savages. To me, that's the same idea of burning the village to save the village. Shooting civilization into savages. Bringing, it's a lot like with Crusaders, or that the white man burden mentality of you're bringing the heathens Christ and you're bringing them salvation at the edge of a blade. Shooting civilization into a savage is likely to kill them, whether they are civilized after the gunshot wound or not. At this point in time, it's likely a death sentence. So to me, that's very, very interesting that you have someone saying essentially the same thing 65, 70 years before what we find being said in Vietnam. And then my goal, and if you guys know of any, I'm going to try and find a similar quote about the war in Afghanistan, which I'm sure it exists. I just haven't come across it yet. I got dinner calling my name. All right, man. Brett, have a good night. So yeah, that's where I am right now. I'll try and show you without getting you too dizzy here. But so I use, what's this called? Workflow, or Workflowy, and it basically just helps me gather and kind of organize my notes and get the flow of everything situated properly. So the plan is to go to the... All right, man. Yeah, I'm doing the same exact thing, so I'm not going to be here too long. But have a good night, man. So yeah, it's the plan is to finish getting all the notes organized and the story kind of formed, scripted tomorrow, and have it out by the end of this week, which will definitely happen. So if you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. But I'm going to sign off and get back to it. All right, we'll talk to you soon.